Mohbad has been officially buried in his hometown in Ikorodu barely 24 hours after he was announced dead. A lot of people have pointed out that his burial was a little too soon and rushed, especially for the fact that he wasn't a Muslim. Mohbad is said to be from a Christian background, and also his father is said to be a pastor. And given the circumstances surrounding his death, many people are left with questioning why he was buried so soon and so quick, even without an autopsy. Because I must say this, the cause of his death is still something that a lot of people are debating. Whereas his family have cleared the air that he died from an infection, an ear infection, many people believe that might not be the case. A lot of people have cited drugs, some people have cited juju. Some have even said that it's the injection that the hospital or the nurses or the doctor at the clinic he went to that may have caused his death. And all of this confusion would have been settled if an autopsy was carried out on him to know the exact cause of his death. However, it seems like an autopsy was not carried out, therefore we may not know the actual cause of his death. Which means we'll have to go with the family that he died from ear infection, or he died from an injection, or he died from whatever they tell us is what it would be. For me, I thought maybe the fact that they are rushing his death is either one or two things. They're trying to either cover up something that they don't want people to know, or they had made peace with the fact that his death might have been as a result of natural causes. Because if the family members of this young man believe that somebody might have caused his death, or believe that there might be somebody responsible for his death, they would not be so quick to bury him like this, in a rushful, rowdy manner that does not seem to be very organized. Even the area they said he was being buried was believed or named to be a farmland, cassava farm looking kind of place that does not seem befitting. A lot of people, even his community people, were disappointed that he was being buried at an abandoned looking cassava farm near a fence that is dwarfed. They were complaining that they thought he had a mansion, they thought he had a big house. Why was he being buried at a isolated farmland in a bushy neighborhood that does not seem to even be protected? His death is heartbreaking. His death is shocking. A lot of people are still even haven't fathomed that he has died. A lot of people, some people at the burial site were complaining that no celebrity showed up, nobody from his record label showed up. Nobody knew he was having a burial. Nobody knew he was going to be buried. A lot of people are still waking up to the news. Some people in other countries have not woken up to this news yet, only for us to hear that he's being buried without an autopsy, without clearing the air of what may have truly caused his death. Many people don't believe his ear infection. People don't believe it. We know that he had other underlying illness, like he suffered depression, he dealt with drugs, he also had hypertension. That is something that has been said. And yes, those grounds could seem as though his death might be something to not be surprised about. However, it's shocking to hear that it was an ear infection that killed him. If he had died from one of those causes, it would have been a lot more believable as to somebody saying he died from an ear infection. And also, what about the injection that they said was administered to him that caused him to slump and not wake up? There's a story about the nurse who gave him the injection, claiming that it's juju. The rumors is just speculating, and we understand that these things are bound to happen, and everybody is bound to say what they believe may have killed him. Everybody has an opinion. But the truth is, we'll only go for what is being said by the immediate family of this young man. And they are the ones saying he may have died from an ear infection. But this is my problem here, and this is what I'm going to say. If this is YouTube, I probably will not show it here. But the way he is being buried is very questionable right now. Not only was this Mohbad's funeral rushed, it was poorly planned. There's a video circulating of how he was placed in the casket. There was a video circulating of how Mohbad was placed in the casket, citing that his head was bent, not just his head, his entire upper body was bent to fit into the casket. Almost as though the casket was too small for him. And so they had to fold him and squeeze him and curve him in a way that looks so unbefitting, just so they could be done with it. It's almost disturbing to watch. It's almost disturbing to see that this young man died so suddenly. An autopsy was not done. People are being accused of having a hand in his death. And those people may never even get a chance of day to know that the autopsy result would vindicate them and now he's just being buried in a very rush and rash so quickly that is making people suspect that something is happening. It's making a lot of people question that, is the family trying to hide something? Why are they in the rush to bury him so quickly, and he's not even Muslim? Why didn't they do an autopsy to confirm what truly caused his death? Given that he has all these complications going on, many people have blamed it on depression. Many people have blamed it on the fact that he was unhappy, he took drugs, he had an ear infection, he took an injection. All of these things is why we do need to know the autopsy result. This is why an autopsy was important. But clearly, we will never know medically what caused his death. And so he has been buried, and that has been buried with him. But the fact that his burial was rushed so quickly, and the way his body was placed in that casket, what I saw was very disturbing. Why was his body so squeezed into the casket, forced into the casket, as though he came from a poor home that can't afford a regular sized casket that would fit him? I hear he's a tall guy, about 6 feet thereabout, but we've seen taller people get buried in proper placed caskets. So why did they have to squeeze him into the casket he was being buried into? That is so not befitting. It's so disappointing. It's shocking. It's raising eyebrows. I don't understand why that had to be that way. I don't understand why anyone had to force this young man into the casket, given his reputation. There's also a video circulating of someone blaming that his wife had a hand in it. People are talking about how his wife quickly went online. This whole thing is why I feel like the people in charge of burying this young man really wanted to bury the truth so that they can control the narrative as to what killed him. Because I saw a video of a woman speaking in Yoruba talking about how the wife, how the wife is blamed. And when I read the comments, I saw people talking about, yeah, she was so quick to go on record. She was so quick to record. You're complaining about the wife being so quick to record. Nobody's talking about how his family are so quick to bury him without an autopsy. What about that? What are they hiding? Because if they had done an autopsy, they would know for a fact if the wife did anything. If the wife did anything, it would have shown in the autopsy. Let's forget the juju aspect, because we can't do autopsy for juju. Let's bring out all the scientific possibilities and put them on the table. That could have only been achieved with an autopsy. But now we don't get to see an autopsy because the family had quickly put him in the ground so that they can control the narrative and see who they can blame without any proof or evidence. That autopsy would have prevented people from going to attack Naira Marley, because everybody is in his page now calling him out, saying he had a hand in it. People are now also pointing his fingers at his wife because she went live and recorded herself after the whole thing. But nobody's talking about the family squeezing this young man into a casket that was not his size and burying him so quickly, barely 12 hours after he died. At this point, I feel like his family is the one that owes us an explanation. At this point, I feel like Mohbad's family is the one that needs to tell us everything that we need to know. When this thing first blew up, we were reviewing the videos that he did last year where he accused Naira Marley of trying to want to hurt him. That video circulated. We have talked about it on a live video when we went on YouTube and on Facebook. Everybody's on Naira Marley's page talking about he had a hand in it. There were rumors circulating that his juju, someone threw sham on him. Some people said it was even when he went to perform in Ikorodu on Sunday that the charm was used on him. But everybody's forgetting the fact that this young man actually felt sick and went to the hospital. And the hospital gave him an injection. And it was that injection that caused him to slump and die. The hospital should be investigated. The nurses and the doctors who administered an injection on him should be investigated. All of a sudden, the doctors and the nurses who gave him the injection that killed him are now scot-free. Nobody's talking about them. Now we're talking about his wife because the wife went live. But nobody wants to talk about the family that are burying him barely 24 hours after he passed, in a small casket that was not his size, that they had to curve him and bend his entire body to fit into the casket. He was bent like a crayfish inside his casket, his final resting place. He was squeezed into it. His neck was tilted. They could not even take time to plan and measure him and get a proper casket for him. They could not. It seemed like they were in a rush to just get rid of him. They were in a rush to bury him and let it end. And that to me is suspicious. That is where we should be questioning, not questioning a woman who has just been made a widow with a 5-month-old child because she went live after her husband passed. If we're going to stand on the fact that his former record label CEO had a hand in his death, this is where an autopsy comes in. This is where we need to check for an autopsy. This is when we need to investigate the hospital and know if anybody paid these doctors to inject him with something that would kill him. That is when we need to know all these things. This is when an investigation should come in. And this is where I would think this guy's family would stand up and push for it, because I feel like he would have the money. They would stand up and push for a proper autopsy, for the right procedure, for the police to carry out an investigation on his death. But rather, they squeeze him in a small wooden poly-made casket, squeezed him into it, and buried him quickly in less than 24 hours. And he's not Muslim. So, what is happening here? What is going on? What is this about? Who are we? Who owes us an explanation? Because I feel like someone does, and I don't know who. I don't know who. Because when I went live and we talked about it, some people were like, he's a young boy, his mother and father would most likely not be in charge of knowing what would happen to him, or being in charge of, the entire burial procession, because they don't want to see their son in this state. And so maybe someone else may have been delegated with the responsibility of seeing that his burial, goes successfully. Now, whoever that person might be, clearly did not waste time to rush it. Clearly, whoever was in charge of his burial may have collected money and bought a cheaper casket just to squeeze this young man inside of it and bury him like somebody that they could not wait to get rid of. It's unfortunate. I initially thought his death may have been something that was maybe natural, maybe an overdose, or maybe he was sick, or maybe the hypertension. But with all of these circumstances, and given how rushed his funeral and his burial was, I was live when I knew he was being buried. I was thinking that people give statements, and only for us to see it live on TikTok, he was being buried. Barely 24 hours. This thing is making me feel like somebody may have actually had a hand in his death, and they are trying to cover it up quickly by burying him quickly. I don't know who. I can't say who. I don't know who, but this is what is giving. If they are taking their time to plan his burial and giving him a befitting burial, where it would be a show of respect, it would be more believable that his death was natural. But for the way they rushed it, squeezed in like a small, tiny snail in a box, squeezed him like he was in so claustrophobic. Seeing him in that, what I saw made me so sick. Someone as talented, as gifted, someone who has blessed the whole nation with his gift and his talent, and that is how they choose to put him and bury him. Oh my God. Even if I'm tired. You guys, I'm done with this story. It's upsetting.